Hi, everybody. We are live for episode 5 of reading the Oat Project out loud. If you are joining me today, this is the Oat Project, How I Faced My Fear and Came of Age in One Wild Summer, and it is my first book. If you haven't listened to any of the others, you might not know what's going on. And they are on my Facebook page. So you can just scroll down and the first 4 are there, obviously chronologically. And then they're also on the Church of Wild YouTube channel. And I don't know what happened, but I didn't need 100 subscribers to make a playlist. So I made a playlist this morning, so you can listen to them. Hi, Aunt Carolyn. So you can listen to the first 4 episodes in a row on YouTube, and that is in the event page. So, but I can post it here as well, but not now. Yeah, later. So I wanted to first say hi to everybody and just thank you for tuning in. Like, this has been crazy to see a lot of names of people that I haven't talked with in a long time. And so it's just been a lot of fun, except when I'm crying, right? So one of the things is that an audiobook, so when an author reads their work, it's a little bit, it's a performance, right? It's also, though, an experience for me to read about this girl that I was in 2007. And so a lot of stuff has happened. Like, I've lost my mom, my marriage ended, a couple, 2 or 3 jobs, and heartbreak, and, all this stuff. And I keep thinking that the book is back there, but it's in front of me. And so I've been, I'm a pretty different person in a lot of ways. Although as I'm reading it, I'm realizing how alike I am. Like, do we ever change? I don't know. It sure seems like maybe not in a lot of ways as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a performance, and then it's like and I'm just inhabiting the words, and then the feelings get me, and either compassion for who that was and is, or awe at how clueless I was, or just so many feelings. So this is it feels a little messy, like it's a performance, like a regular audiobook, but it's not. So I'm really glad you're here. It's a grand experiment, right? I will probably be doing sort of an official audiobook in a studio eventually, and just leave the playlist up on YouTube forever. So if you want the messy version, you can have the messy version. If you want the nice and pristine version, you'll eventually be able to get that, like on audible.com and all those places. Okay? So, let's see. Everything is plugged in today because I didn't charge anything, because Mary Poppins. Went to Mary Poppins with my kids. And so all right. Get the thing. Are you guys ready? I don't know if I am. This is really exhausting. I'm just telling you. It doesn't seem like maybe it should be exhausting, but once again, tea. Sorry for all you who think I'm incorrigibly wild and drink whiskey all the time. Just imagine that it's whiskey. How's that? So, the Oat Project, Chapter 4, A Door for the Devil. A door for the devil. Journal. Already it is June, and I'm only on the 4th task. I need a nap, alone, without interruption. Ah, motherhood. Since Leo's birth, I have felt a blockage in my middle, along with gas, intermittent pain, and a tendency to slouch protectively over my body, over my belly. I've avoided yoga, even though my mind and body crave it. That coil of emotion might unravel in class, and I'd have to leave, bawling and mortified. I am whirling, spinning, creating my own maelstrom of energy and creation, sucking all around me into the still eye, but it is not peaceful here. What do I even mean? New Age mumbo jumbo. I endured daily headaches from 10th through 12th grades. In senior year, my parents took me to a chiropractor. Whether they came to this decision themselves or someone suggested it, in our world, it was radical. Chiropractors were con artists, their medicine based on Eastern religion. We Christians were to go nowhere near such New Age mumbo jumbo. The 1960s rise of the Age of Aquarius, with its Eastern philosophy, religion, and mysticism, was part of the devil's plan to be battled and stamped out as thoroughly as possible. Energy healing, with its chakras and meridians, was strictly forbidden. Christ, after all, was a Westerner. His Middle Eastern identity and connections to Eastern mysticism buried under centuries of dogma. Perhaps desperation and love. I'm going to say that part again so that. Perhaps desperation and love convinced my parents to try it. When the chiropractor examined my neck, the top 2 vertebrae were twisted and tilted. You haven't been in an accident? He asked, looking at the x-ray. Nope. Did anything ever happen to your neck? Nope, I said, wondering what on earth was wrong with me. Wait, 9th grade. One of the best and worst years of my life. I was cool once. 9th grade. We had moved to Roseburg, Oregon from my beloved Ohio the summer after 7th grade. I was the new girl. I had absolutely no idea how cute I was. I had gotten contacts the year before, but 1 year with classmates who knew me as the bottle-bottom bespectacled, always smartest in class nerd had not changed my self-perception. I was not the kind of girl boys liked. All 7th grade, I crushed on Clay Culvert. That is his real name. And if you know him, I totally put it in here because nothing is negative about him. And if you know him, you need to tell him thank you for me. Okay? I'm actually blushing. I liked him that much. But yeah, like, thank you, Clay Culvert. Okay. I crushed on Clay Culvert in all 7th grade. And that was in Ohio. All 7th grade, I crushed on Clay Culvert. He was miles out of my league, down to his tall, blonde, of course, girlfriend. The last day of school, when they handed out yearbooks, I was lucky to be near Clay, and a wild courage zinged me into a beeline towards him. Circa 1982 yearbook rules. 1. The first person to sign a yearbook sets the tone. 2. The top left inside cover space is reserved for one's boy or girlfriend or best friend, knowing every single person signing after will read those words. Asking Clay to sign my yearbook first was the boldest move of my life thus far. He would know I liked him, and who knew what words of disdain or, worse, apathy might he write. And what did Clay Culvert write? To a cute girl who will be on Knockout next year. Love, Clay. I can still feel the jaw-dropping awe of that moment. I almost fainted. The rest of the day was a blindsided, happy haze. First, he chose the linchpin spot. Second, he thought I was cute. Third, knockout? In my wildest dreams, and I have always been exceptional at dreaming, Clay Culvert's calling me a knockout did not exist. His love, Clay, twitched my brain over the edge of understanding with a glimmer of hope that 8th grade might be amazing. Show choir and its trip to Washington, D.C., Clay Culvert, knockout. The dream of being one of the pretty girls wavered like heat on my horizon. I never saw Clay again. We moved to Oregon that summer. I thought leaving the first place I'd ever put down roots would ruin my life. But by the end of that first year in Oregon, I had made friends who cajoled me into trying out for the 9th grade cheerleading squad. I still think I got elected because I yelled the loudest at tryouts. Being a singer occasionally has advantages. Suddenly, I was something I'd never known: popular. It made leaving Clay Culver and all his perks of 8th and 9th grade in Ohio a little more bearable. However, though I had thought being popular would make everything in my life perfect, underneath it all, I was mired in deep sadness, missing the place I had rooted. It is now known as clinical depression, but I thought of my crying every single night for 2 years as silly weakness. I don't recall how much of the pain I showed to my family and parents, but it underpinned every good thing that happened in Oregon. 7th grade, moving, Oregon, Clay, the crying, it washed through my mind when I told the chiropractor, 9th grade. I told him of when a fellow cheerleader had gotten on my shoulders before I was ready, and I heard a crack in my neck, and how the headaches started soon after. But I smiled. Twisted neck vertebrae were worth the price of feeling like one of the cool kids for a year. We moved to Texas before 10th grade when my headaches started. 3 years later, my normal was an aching head. I had been allowed to go to my junior and senior proms, though going to the movies was still out of the question. Maybe the church or my parents had so the whole thing with Clay Culver, I'm like, and just moving. It was an intense time, and I have a lot of compassion for my middle school kid and my high school kids and kid and college. Wow, kid. Anyway, having the feelings. Maybe the church or my parents had liberalized enough to consider seeing a chiropractor. Maybe a church member with an unassailable measure of holiness supported their decision. I like to think my parents simply didn't care, if only it helped. And it did. The chiropractor began to heal it. Over time, my head hurt only occasionally, all at the hands of what the church considered a quack. Parentheses. So for those who haven't been here, parentheses, when I say that, it means that I'm writing it from 2016. So when this was published, not 2007 when I was doing the project. Parentheses. Now, many chiropractors grace the church with their sincerity and healing, but then they were in the same category as witches. Words to avoid. In the first meeting, the Oat Council's scope of suggestions had surprised me as they honed in on tasks that, inwardly or outwardly, were wild, scary, and risky to me. I kept remembering how the cool kids in my high school would go cow tipping, and I had always wanted to go. Have I always wanted to be like everyone else, like some on my Oat Council were saying? Consciously, being cool was not my purpose. I was always the good girl outsider, keenly aware of how different I was from most of my peers, by upbringing, brains, and lack of the need to rebel. No one asked me to be wild. Perhaps they assumed my answer would be no, more because of my personality than church. But I did feel wistful sometimes, wishing I could be sillier, freer, and more fun. Even decades later, I felt the same way more often than I could admit. But though surely energy work was trivial, it was not an accepted respite for Christians. I had never considered it to help with pregnancy or depression. I had only ever heard the term Reiki. Vague notions of New Age woo-woo ran through my head, even though by then I was pretty much a hippie. We ate mostly organic local food and used herbal remedies. It started with Sage's birth, the responsibility of growing a child, leading us to a more natural lifestyle. Before her, alternative healing made me think of chanting, barefoot, dreadlocked, hula hooping, free love hippies. Fist bump to all you out there. Bring your hula hoops. Words that might open a door for the devil. This is the list. Words that might open a door for the devil. New Age, yoga, energy, unless speaking of oil, chakras, aura, meditation, guided imagery, the province of demons, third eye, mantra, holistic, spirituality, astrology, world government, United Nations. But I increasingly heard news of how meditation improves the immune system, how acupuncture cures all manner of ailments, how herbs are often more effective than pharmaceuticals. None of this new knowledge would exist without the hippie movement of the 60s, anathema to the conservative evangelical church. Thus, this task, Reiki, triggered my fear. God, stardust. I sat on the front step of my house in Colorado's high-altitude summer sun to call Joe's Body Shop and make a Reiki appointment. I remembered being a kid looking out the back car window as we passed Levi's Body Shop, wondering what exactly they did in there, what they might do to my body, knowing I would never know since those places were for rich folks, wondering why the storefronts didn't look more inviting and had so many cars. Until I was a teenager, I thought body shops were for people. The day before, I told my mom about this, and she said, "Yeah, I remember that. You always had a unique way of seeing things." Joe was a fourth-generation Reiki master. I didn't understand the hierarchy, but it sounded impressive. I envied his heritage. As Joe spoke, my inadequacy as a mother washed over me. Sorry, it's really funny. I read this for the last edits at least twice out loud, completely through, changing. And as a writer, now I'm like reading it and I'm wanting to edit things because I'm like, oh my God, I use washed over all the time. So kudos to writers, and just know our pain. We would love to always make it better. As Joe spoke, my inadequacy as a mother washed over me. Having left the church after our daughter's birth, I lost the ritual and traditions as well. Along with being messy and cluttered, I sucked at creating new traditions. My children clung to the few rituals I managed to embed in our lives. Joe sounded older, matter-of-fact, and affable. He also made me nervous. I was nervous anyway, but Joe's last name was Latin American, and Latino men, well, men with any sort of accent, turned me to goo. And I had no idea what might go on in Reiki. Clothes are naked, intimacy's unmasked. What if I were attracted to the practitioner? Back then, I'd not yet lost all my religion. I interpreted energy work a little differently from science, the investigation of God's creation. We are made of stardust, our bodies more space than matter, energy holding it all together. And before man began to sever his connection with the natural world, especially through industrialization, we were much more in tune with it. So it makes sense to me that some people are more connected to the energy pulsating through us all, like the hum of God. It's simply how they are. Within the church, in tune people tend to downplay their gift, saying it's all God. But why can't God be more present in an individual with the gift for sensing and healing? Why must we disdain the power of humanity to describe the power of God? Aren't we made in his image? Why must, according to so many philosophies and doctrines and religions, one cancel out the other? So when I go to this Reiki master, I expected a person with a strong connection to God's creation. He may not call it that, but my God and faith are big enough to include the Reiki construct. I'll be smack in the middle of God's will, right where I should be, not in the belly of the devil. Report. Braving. How about I read like this? Braving the New Age Nexus. It was 4:30 p.m. and I had stopped at Starbucks on the way to the 6 p.m. appointment. Rain moved in from the south over the mountains, cooling the summer's heat. I sat facing the street, watching the sky darken. The ritual of coffee soothed my nerves as regulars traipsed in and out. The clouds slipped a veil over the eastern sky, now flat gray. I feel like the trees out there, whipped by the wind. I will try to stay in the eye of my storm. Time to go. I was dismayed to find a metaphysical store sharing space with Joe's Body Shop. I walked in anyway, and bins of stones and crystals, tarot cards, jewelry, shelves of books on energy, Wicca, even on teaching pagan prayers to children, smote my eyes. I walked the aisles overwhelmed and scared. My past said to run, but I stayed and told the lady standing behind the high counter that I had an appointment. Are my eyes as wide as they feel? I filled out as little as possible on the Reiki info sheet, wanting to see what Joe would see in my energy. When he came out, I was relieved to find him older and attractive, but not my type at all. Phew. He sat at his desk and asked, "What is your life like?" Where do I start? Here we go. Well, it's pretty busy. I'm a mom and a writer. And I recited my litany of involvement, ending with my life cake's icing, 3 young children. His eyebrows rose halfway through and stayed up until the end. I tend to hold stress away from my mind and store it in my body, I said. Okay, he said. And I said, I've never had any type of energy work, though I do believe in its connection to quantum mechanics. He explained Reiki. I'm sorry. Can I laugh at myself? He explained Reiki, that it was a method of channeling energy through the body to activate my ki and natural healing processes, or chi and natural healing processes. Sounds like what the church calls the laying on of hands for healing. Even as I knew I should flee, I felt more at ease by the minutes. And then it was time. The treatment room was dimly lit, and a table next to the door held a tray with polished stones, crystals, and 2 large deep glass bowls with what looked like huge pestles. A massage table was made up like a bed, with sheets and a Southwest patterned blanket. You may disrobe or not, Joe said. It doesn't matter for Reiki. I won't, for more convenience, I said. I wish I were comfortable naked. Will I be by the end of this summer? We're only going to go to your comfort level with this, he said. Okay, I said, thank you. I crawled under the covers and laid down, face up. Music rich with echoing pipes and drums played softly. Above me hung a beaded wire spiral with a feather suspended in the center. It was next to a vent that reminded me of the shape of a Celtic cross. Has anyone besides me noticed that juxtaposition? I doubt it. I wanted to sleep, but was too keyed up. I breathed deeply and sent breath to my tension, as yoga had taught me. Relax, Jene. Joe moved his hands just above my body, lightly resting them on what I thought were chakra points. He started at my head and moved quickly to my feet in what seemed to be a quick survey of the territory. He then worked his way back up, my entire body slowly, hands still hovering, pausing at times with his head bowed. I had deliberately not told Joe my other reasons for being here. Issues with my father, Leo's birth, pain during ovulation, esophageal sphincter difficulties. My skepticism still reigned, and I wanted to see what he could figure out, what he saw via energy. Joe paused for a while at my midsection. Sometimes, well, almost always, people have areas of blockage in their energy flow, he said. I apply energy to release the blockage. If it's been blocked for a while, it can get crusted over and takes a little more to break through. Okay, I said through a haze of relaxation. One thing that can help is sonic waves at a specific frequency. It's called toning, he said. That sounds fine to me, I said. I'm so relaxed I'd be fine with anything, almost. The sound was slight at first, but built into a sustained ringing that was almost too loud. It vibrated through my body. He did it 3 or 4 times. He set down the bowl and started moving his hands an inch or so above me again. He paused at my throat, and as warmth flooded over it, I felt a weight lift. Whoa, that was a surprise. He moved to my head for a while. Then he stopped. It felt like we had just started. Then he stopped. It felt like we had just started. I opened my eyes and looked up at him. Okay, your lower chakras were nice and clear. There's one here. He waved his palm over the top of my thighs, and one here. He did the same over my pelvis, and those were both clear. He moved his hands to my gut. This one, though, was crusted over. Okay, I said. It has to do with anger, hurt, resentment, and hatred, he said. So the one below that is fine. The one that deals with your female systems, yes, that's all clear. A wave of relief flooded over me. It's this one that's blocked? It's this one that's blocked, he said. Well, I'm a little surprised at the one below that being fine because I've had some pain there, but that's good, I said. But since my son's birth, I have felt like I was stopped up here, and I placed my hands on my stomach. And I stopped as my throat tightened. Try again, Jene. Because of how his birth went. I told Joe about it, and as I did, I realized how angry I was at how close Leo had come to dying. How I didn't get to bond or rest with him like I should have. How facing his near death had not cured me of my fear of mine. I don't want to be afraid anymore. My voice became small, and that's why I'm here. To face things, so I'll be less afraid. I know with no doubt I'm supposed to take this journey to do these wild things. That's so powerful, Jene, Joe said. His hands hovered over my throat. I felt a blockage here, too. Funny you should say that, I said, and told him about my esophageal sphincters not working right. When I was 19, after a bout with flu and stress in college, I suddenly couldn't swallow anything but liquids. After that, I choked easily, especially on meat, and it's been that way since. My parents took me to a gastroenterologist who found that my esophageal sphincter spasms worsening with stress. I felt my throat, but when your hands were there, I felt a weight leave it. He smiled. That was amazing, I said. Thank you. I got off the table and walked out, feeling tall, clear, and strong, like after doing yoga. He said he honored my life and journey with the project and wished me well. I left wondering at myself. I had sensed nothing evil or warped in Reiki. Why had I feared it? That fear was gone. And yet, as I got in my car, I wondered if it was because Reiki was harmless or because I had already been tainted by sin, warping my perspective. Even if that's the case, I'm not quitting. Journal. And this is in parentheses. which means it was in 2012. 11, 21, 2012. And I'm going to scratch my nose behind the board. Okay. I have an itchy nose. Last night, I sat with my mom as she struggled through the worst night of pain thus far in her fight with cancer. Her abdomen was sore from throwing up. The morphine wasn't working well, and her thirst remained unquenched for fear of more nausea. I felt completely helpless. I couldn't take away the pain. So I rubbed her hands, feet, and back. It was all I could do. A few weeks before, I had run into my chiropractor at a coffee shop and asked him for suggestions on how to ease her pain. He showed me how to, quote, pull pain off the body via pressure points on the hands and feet. As my mom seemed to barely breathe from one moment to the next, as I stroked her legs and feet up and down, I recalled his instructions. So on the downstroke, I imagined my hands pulling the pain out, squeezing the tips of her toes, pulling and snapping at the end of each toe. She said, that feels wonderful. My inner eyebrows raised in surprise. It felt wonderful. A technique based on an Eastern religious understanding of the body's chakras and chi had worked when the acceptable Western medicine failed. I kept rubbing her feet and thought of the 80s, post Frank Peretti's This Present Darkness, of the paranoia that swept the evangelical church in an intense shift from fighting evil metaphorically and inside ourselves to battling literal demons infesting every bad thing, from illness to mere discomfort. A lady once told me how she prayed that God would defeat the demon keeping her from finding a parking place close to a store. We were told to, quote, take up the sword of Christ against demonic forces, to stay in constant conversational prayer with God and his spirit. I'm not sure when the church's shift to even marginally accepting some energy healing began. Was it scientific studies proving acupuncture's efficacy, or a prominent Christian's testimony? A conspiracy? Or was it the slow crumbling of the wall between church and pop culture? The tethering of the church's fortunes with modern youth culture? The weakening of faith? Integrating Eastern philosophies and pop culture inside church over decades? However it came to be. In 2012, my dying mother, a former conservative evangelical preacher's wife, a faithful evangelical Christian, did not balk or pull her feet away when I told her I pulled off her pain using a technique based on the chakras, meridians, and chi. Instead, she thanked me, closed her eyes, and rested. Maybe she was the one who pushed for the chiropractor to help me in high school. Maybe she didn't care as much about doctrine as I'd assumed, and had been so focused on loving me that she wasn't afraid to rebel. So, it's a short night tonight. I'm going to stay true. That's the end of chapter 4. I'm going to stay true to doing one chapter a night, and that will get us going. Ending at about the end of the month, because some of them are longer and some are shorter. The next one is it's called The Edge in Me, and it's about getting, it's this side, about getting this, a piercing. So thank you again. I saw a friend who's actually in the book. She can out herself if she wants to. But we're still friends, and I saw her yesterday. yesterday. And she asked how it was going, and I said, oh gosh, I'm exhausted. Like, I've been really surprised at how much energy this requires. But I'm really enjoying it. It does feel intense. Um, as as little as I have like big, huge panic attacks these days, it's like this, whoa, like trepidatious, excited, but crazy feeling to feel the feels and see this book. That last scene, my mom, that was on November 21st of 2012, and she died on December 4th, 6 years ago. So, and she was my best friend, and I missed her like crazy. In Mary Poppins today, they have this song that is, oh, I don't remember. It's about like people that we've lost looking down on us from whatever star they choose to inhabit. And I don't know, I've never really thought of myself or just been someone who's like, they're watching over us and they're with us and all that, but that kind of changes when you lose someone. And I do feel, I know that there's no energy loss in this universe of ours. And I think if anyone would have been sitting there with you watching this, it would have been her. I'm gonna cry again. But yeah. And if you want to see a video of her, it's on that YouTube channel. I put it on the Church of Wild YouTube channel, and I think there's a blog on my website that has this little video of her at being interviewed about this book, actually. So actually, I'll just put the link in this thread so you guys can read it. So if you have any questions, please do comment and let me know. Eventually, we will have some kind of a Q&A in a few days, in the next few days. And yeah, thank you. I'm rambling because it feels so short tonight instead of being over an hour. But I'm going to be true to the ending of the chapter. Okay? Bye. Love you. Thank you.